Welcome to the Orange County Forum, where newsmakers keep you informed about local, national, and global issues that impact Orange County today.
The forum is committed throughout this year of taking these issues you see in the report and bringing in top national speakers, and certainly having Paul Tuff here on education reform is an excellent opportunity. And we're also going to look at healthcare and technology in our future programs. So with that, let me introduce our fine panel. First, the moderator, and as those of you know from past panels, we call him, the referee is basically the role of our moderator, because we have such a shy and reserved panel that doesn't. But Jim Leach is also a past president and is Director of External Affairs at Santa Margarita Water District, but many of you know him through his past role at the Forum, where he's been president and represented Cox Communications. To his right is the last year's audience favorite, the none other than Lucy Dunn, President and CEO of the Orange County Business Council. And anytime we can have Lucy here within 72 hours of St. Patrick's Day, we're always, which for her is the entire week, and then we're really happy here. And last, our newest member to the panel, but a familiar face for those of you that knew his work both in the community and the Irvine Company, Max Gardner, President and CEO of United Way. Let's give the panel a warm welcome, and then you'll have a chance. Yeah. So, it's all yours.
Okay, very good. The part of our mission that talks about thought leaders and headline makers is especially important because we're so well represented today with Max from the Orange County United Way. He has an enormous background in real estate industry, apartments, living, housing. He was at Trammell Crow Residential, and he began his career in the financial industry. So he has a broad perspective of the many things that are in this report, in addition to the very important thing we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is the closer connection with this report and his organization. We also have with us Lucy Dunn. When the flyer first came out, there were two faces on it, mine and Lucy's, and I panicked, frankly. Because my motto has always been, there's really no substitute for a lack of preparation. But Lucy's always a great addition to these programs, and so we're very thrilled to have both of you with us today. I want to start off with just an opportunity for our panelists to talk a little bit in general about the report. And it seemed to me as I was going through the report that the elements of it seemed particularly important as we came out of the 2012 election cycle. All of the issues that were within that framework, the recovery and education and healthcare and the environment, and there's a big piece in here about voter participation and changing demographics and the impact on that. So I thought I would ask the panelists, probably start with Max. Give us your perspective, first of all, on that piece of this report that you found particularly interesting. But did you find that nexus between the big, broader issues that we're talking about in the country and the outcome specifically for here in Orange County particularly compelling?
At United Way, our focus is on the overall strength of the community. We really focus on three areas that are touched on heavily in this report: education, income, and health. We really focus on those because they're the building blocks for a self-sufficient life. That's what really makes it so people can take care of themselves and take care of their families. And the Community Indicators Report does a great job of focusing very thoroughly on many of those areas. So let me talk a minute about a few of the things that I think are really critical in the report on theirs. Education is one of the key areas for us. It's great to note that the high school dropout rate went down to 9.3% this year. And we're pleased to see that the Hispanic dropout rate actually moved in the right direction. But at the same time, you have to keep that in perspective. When you look at it in the details, there's over 4,000 students that dropped out of high school in Orange County this year. And they didn't just drop out of Newport Beach or Laguna Beach. They dropped out of where you would expect them to drop out from: Anaheim, Santa Ana, Garden Grove, those areas. And the disparity between the parts of the county, I think, is very discouraging and very concerning, one that we really have to pay attention to. But when you take that a little bit further, if you look at the numbers of what the cost of a high school dropout is, if you compare the average high school graduate in the United States to the average high school dropout in the United States, and you fast forward for 50 years to look at the difference in the impact on our community over that period of time, the difference per student is about $200,000. So if you take that 4,000 dropout and multiply it by $200,000, that's an $800 million negative impact on our community potentially over the next 50 years. And we do that every year. So the fact that we have fewer dropouts is great. The fact that we have any dropouts is completely unacceptable, and we need to continue to focus on the causes for that and the reasons for that. And Mike Ruane, I'll tell you that Orange County is a tough place to be poor. If you don't have a reasonable income, if you don't have a sustaining wage, it's a very difficult place to live. In order to afford the average one-bedroom apartment in Orange County, and I say that being a recovering real estate developer who did a lot of apartments, the average one-bedroom apartment in Orange County, you have to earn a little over $50,000 a year in order to afford that apartment. Compare that to a minimum wage employee. If you earn minimum wage, you have to work over 120 hours a week in order to be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment. Now, I don't know if you've done the math yet. There's 168 hours in the week. Okay, so if you work 124 hours, I think it is, that pretty much fills up your week if you're doing that in order to afford that apartment. And that is completely unacceptable. The lack of affordable housing in this county is atrocious, and it makes people's lives incredibly difficult. We have about 28,000 students in this county right now that, although they're not homeless, they are housing insecure. They either live doubled up, or they live in somebody's garage, or they live, there's some that are living in cars, etc. And the impact on education for that, if people don't have a stable place to live and can't stay in the same school district and have a place to study, the impact on their education is incredible. So, and I'll turn to the health area. If you look at health in our county, we have almost 40% of our students in Orange County today have a health-related issue because of their weight. They're either overweight or they're obese. It's about 20% overweight, 20% obese. It gets even worse when you look at the adults. It's about 50% that have a weight challenge in this county. And that's a number that's getting worse on us. And you can apply the impact of that on emergency rooms or healthcare costs, et cetera. But those are numbers that are moving against us right now, and we need to be very, very thoughtful of those. And if you top it all off, if you look at the end of the report, you'll see that the resources that nonprofits have in order to deal with many of these issues, and there are a lot of great nonprofits in this county that are doing wonderful work, but they are continually challenged by the resources. I was talking just a few minutes ago with Holly about the fact that sequestration, we don't know what the impact of that is. We just know it's not going to be good. And so that all of these items are high on our list. One more point about that: they're all interconnected. When we start talking about education, you can't talk about education without talking about housing, because if kids don't have a place to study, if they don't have a steady location that they live so that they go to the same school on a regular basis, they're not going to get a good quality education. If they don't get an education, they're not going to get a job. If they don't get a job, they're not going to take care of their health. All these issues wrap together in such a way that we've got to pay attention to them in a holistic way, and that's something that we try to do at United Way. So.
Thank you very much. Same question to you, Lucy. You've reviewed this. You've seen it from your perspective, from the business communities.
Growth is up in the county, up 0.9% from 6% over the last few years. Compared to Austin, Texas, growth 3%, not 0.9%, 3%. Very interesting dynamic. And our growth is slowing. Even though it's going up, it's slowing. Again, births, natural births here are the driver of our growth in the county, not immigration, for all the talk about it. We are a diverse county, a minority majority. No one ethnic group dominates, although Hispanics will take over as the majority in a few years. Notice our diversity is Hispanic and Asians both gaining. We have a substantially higher foreign-born, 31% versus 13% in the U.S., and all population age groups grew except the 25 to 34-year-olds for the last 10 years. 25 to 34-year-olds. Where's Austin's growth? 25 to 34-year-olds. Right. We got to keep our young people here. So file that one away, ladies and gentlemen. 18th most dense county in the nation out of 3,000 counties. Let me share that again. Out of 3,000 counties, we're the 18th most dense. This is what metropolitan living looks like, people. We are not a bedroom community. This is metropolitan living. And yet our land use, which I found fascinating, if you looked at the pie chart on page 7, 60% of our land in Orange County is government, open space, and public uses versus 40% commercial and residential development. That's a fascinating dynamic. You recall, of course, it takes 25 Orange counties to fill San Bernardino County, our largest county next door. That's how small, compact, everything's right here. Fascinating dynamic. And then the other interesting aspect that I found is we anticipate faster jobs growth than population growth here. And that's a really interesting point when our strategy over the last couple of years has been jobs creation, short-term, jobs creation, jobs creation. Thank you, OCTA. Thank you, our cities that have turned red tape into red carpet. But Max talked about so many cool things. Interesting that our jobs growth, we have to now start looking at a future trend on mobility. A little bit more about that in a bit. So take a look also at our business climate. Orange County is now in the top 100 of the best places to do business. Our education is good. We need improvements. Our cost of doing business is bad because of Sacramento, not because of the things we're doing here locally. But we are now 99th out of the top, in the top 100 of the best places to do business. We were 10th in 2002. We were 10th. But nevertheless, that's okay. Our tourism is up 15% of our county's employment. The benefits of tourism, the multiplier effect of our restaurants and stores, hugely important. Plus cities get tax revenue, right? So having tourism increase is good. Visitor spending is good. Okay, now, mobility. Hugely important as a future trend issue for the county when you look at the fact that our transportation funding at the state level has been reduced to, I think, 13%. At the federal level, we get our funding comes 10% from the feds, getting smaller. So your Measure M tax dollars are funding over 76% of our mobility benefits. Translation, traffic improvements, right? But the problem with that is you all voted mostly for freeway improvements. And yet our transit funding that benefit our most vulnerable populations, that is the mandate from the state to reduce greenhouse gases, get you on buses, get you on trains. OCTA had to cut transit service by 20% because they have no funding to do it. And we voted, we said, oh, we like buses, but let other people ride them. We'd rather our money go into freeways. So an interesting future trend dynamic for us to look at on mobility. We all think our gas tax covers it all. The reality is the 37 cents that we pay for freeways, we should actually be paying $1.82 per gallon. Are you kidding me, Lucy? We need to increase our gas tax? No, we have Measure M that covers it, and we're trying to push for efficiencies and effectiveness in our transportation systems. How do we get Caltrans to do things more efficiently? Why does Orange County have 2 transportation agencies doing the same thing? Things that we need to look at in a new and holistic way based upon some of the things that we have showing in our own community indicators report. And tourism up, we love our tourists. We want them to spend their money here, but we also want them to leave, right? And that's a very interesting dynamic when Orange County, the hotbed of transportation innovation, we are the toll road capital of the state of California. We started with express lanes on the 91 that actually have Riverside commuters, Inland Empire commuters, paying into Orange County's coffers to benefit Orange County projects. Wonderful. And yet, with all due respect to my beautiful OCTA board of directors, they chose not to put an express lane on the 405 in order to take that LA traffic that's coming up and make them pay for the trips into Orange County and make them pay into Orange County coffers for transportation improvements. So interesting tension dynamics. We love our business community thriving. We love our tourism. We need to increase that, but we need to connect our dots among all of these different areas. We always talk about manufacturing. We're doing pretty good here in manufacturing. Our high-tech exports, transportation products, computer hardware and software, electronics, those free trade agreements helped us a lot. They helped us a lot. We're on the coast with that Asian marketplace. We've got that great diversity in ethnicity here that stays connected to the home countries, which then helps us thrive. I love that about our county. Stuff people don't know, right? But Max is right. We have a high cost of living driven by our high housing costs. For example, if 100 is the average, Orange County's at 143. San Francisco, no surprise, 163. Austin, 95. Where are my young people going? Now, an interesting a demographic that just drives me crazy. We're getting older in Orange County. We're not having our young people fill that void. We have the young people that are here overweight and obese with medical issues.
You're pointing at Max, you know that.
Max,
It's all right, she calls me young, it's okay.
that's right. And yet, who's going to take care of us as we age? So we need to have that healthy next generation take care of our aging workforce. We need to keep that next generation here paying into our tax system. So again, looking short term, we looked at jobs creation strategies, right? To get us through this tough environment. Now it's time to look long term and focus on just the things Max were saying, talking about education, making sure we can keep those high-paying jobs filled here, keeping our young people here with housing appropriate, and economic development. Is
Thank
that good
you.
enough?
That's very good. And I was concerned you weren't going to be fulsome in your answers. Of course. One of the elements that I wanted to talk about to sort of bring us back to a little more granular element is the United Way's community engagement process that we were involved with this. And you mentioned your 4 areas of focus: education, income, health, and housing. And you also outlined some specific goals over a 10-year period. And I think you just briefly touched on dropout rates, financial stability, and homeless. If you will, talk to us a little bit about the process around that, your involvement with this, and how you got to that, to those goals, because I think it ties into the whole notion that Mike mentioned of the data-driven innovation, and what, if anything, you can glean from this report. And I'm certain there's plenty that would give you confidence in your ability to achieve those goals over the period.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we started, what he's mentioning is the fact that we're actually going through a strategic planning process, and it's really one that's involving the entire community. And it started back when we realized, and this is something I think that Lucy touched on a little bit with the community, but we realized that almost the fragmented nature of this county. It's a really interesting county when you look at it. I mean, you start with the fact that this is the 6th largest county in the country. Right. 6th largest, 20th density, but 6th largest in terms of population. Bigger than 20 states, okay? But people, and I lived in Northern California for a long time, people still ask me how Los Angeles is. Right. And I kind of go, well, I don't know, I haven't been there in a year. It's, and so, but when you think about it, we don't have radio and TV that's based here. Even our public television station went Southern California now. So thank goodness for the Orange County Register, because I think they are really focusing on an identity for Orange County. We don't have a downtown. Not only do we have the county, but we have 34 different cities. We have 27 school districts. So when you try and figure out something to do in the school system or with the various governments, you have the plethora of people that you have to talk to get anything done. And And this led us to think about how do we bring some collective thinking to the community? How do we get around the table? How do we decide what we ought to focus on? And what we did was we had our board of directors, we took 4 of our board of directors for each of the areas of education, income, health, and housing, and had them lead a discussion out into the community where we brought everybody that we could think of. I mean, literally, we invited everybody into this conversation to say, okay, number one, what are the main challenges that we ought to be addressing? And number 2, how do we go about addressing those? And we're about, I would say, 2/3 of the way through that process. But there were some interesting themes that came out of that. And in each of those areas, we had an identified goal. Education, we want to make sure that kids get an education that will allow them to be productive and successful in the community. But you have to measure that too. And so we said we want to cut the dropout rate in Orange County in half. And what we're doing now is we're building the plans to allow us to accomplish that over a 10-year period. But that's a pretty aggressive goal. And let me tell you, United Way doesn't have the resources to make that happen. That is a collective goal, and that's one that, it isn't one that we said, hey, Orange County, here's a good idea. We went out to the community and said, you tell us what the goal ought to be. And so this is a collective goal that the community came up with together. And now we're all about how do we build the plans together to accomplish that goal. We're doing the same in the areas of income, and when we talk about income, that's jobs, that's financial, fiscal management, knowing how to have a budget, how to plan for your future. Housing is pretty self-explanatory in terms of how do we get housing, but how do we connect people with housing more efficiently than we've done in the past. So what we're doing is we're building a bridge and a series of goals and challenges and then action steps that we can do in order to attack each of those. The interesting themes in there was every one of the groups individually came out with and said, number one, education is critical. The other is every one of these groups, the 4 groups independently came back and said, we need to, if we're going to move the needle in this county, we have to focus on our youth and our children. That doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to the seniors. It doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to the vets. But that if we're really going to make a difference in this community long-term, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we have to focus on the youth and the children in this community to be able to make sure that they have an education, that they have housing, that they have their health, et cetera. And so those kind of overriding issues I thought were really interesting because they came out independently from each of these 4 groups. And so now what we're doing is we're bringing those together in a collective fashion to bring those back to the community in what we call collective impact. Collective impact is a concept that came out of Stanford University for social innovative research. And it's a very solid piece that says no one group is going to make a difference. No one group is going to change the community that you live in. It takes the collective impact of everybody. And there are 5 pieces. I'll see if I can remember the 5 pieces specifically. But you have to have a specific goal. You have to have a series of communications that make it so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. You have to have a backbone organization, which hopefully United Way can play a role to be that backbone organization. But there's certain key aspects that have to be there for collective impact really to work. And our whole goal is to try and bring the community together around those issues so that we can solve those problems together. So it's not us solving the problems, it's us collectively solving the problems. And the neat thing about it when we did that, I was a little bit concerned because keep in mind I'm new in this, okay? So from a nonprofit business, this is new to me. I was a little bit worried that I'd go out to the community and say, here's the goals that we've identified and what we want to accomplish, and that people would say, well, what gives United Way the right to establish those goals? The fact is, we didn't establish those goals, the community did, and when we talked to the community about those goals and what we want to accomplish, and that we wanted to take a very active role in that, instead of saying, what gives you the right, their answer was, thank goodness, it's about time. Thank you very much, what can I do to help? And the enthusiasm with which we were received in this conversation really lets you know that the people in this community want to make a difference. They want to make a change. They want to help the people that need the assistance. And it's really heartwarming. It's what makes me feel good about where we live when you see people say, sign me up, I'm in. I'll do what I can to help you in the process. So that's a process, and there's a little bit about it. We were pleased to provide a bit of an article early on in the Community Indicators report, talking some about collective impact and the role if you're interested in the concept and the detail of it. And there is, like I say, there's this great series of articles from Stanford that if you're interested, I'll be happy to forward them to you as well. So
your process predated the development of the report. Is that what I'm
Of the
getting?
community
Yeah,
indicators
yeah.
report? Yeah, this is, we've been working on this for really close to a year now in the process. But it's an evolving process, so it's one that we, and the indicators report is critical to us to be able to understand that. Because what Lucy was talking about before, if you don't understand the numbers and you don't peel the onion back, you can't figure out where to put your resources, where to put your energy, where you're going to make a difference. And so something like the community indicators report, and please do take a look at this, because you may not find everything in there of interest, but I guarantee you will find something in there of interest. And it's presented in a way that not only says, here's the issue and here's the facts, but it tells you why you should care. Why does it make a difference to Orange County? And I guarantee you there's something in there that'll be of interest to you in the report.
I really want to commend Max for the process. I think it was really at OC Forum when we first heard Dan Yankelovich talk. He's the father of public polling. He did the polling behind how we got Prop 13 passed in the first place. And our society has moved to living, breathing, and dying on polling and press headlines. So then he invented focus groups, right? And we talked a little bit about focus groups in this meeting where everyone will get together and you kind of can give and take, but there's flaws in a focus group as a small group. This kind of community dialogue where you have people understanding each sides of issues and be able to come together to find creative planning, it's incredibly time consuming, but it's amazingly adult-like. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't have then each side of the issue and everything is black and white as a poll will show, because a poll just gives you a snapshot of time in the way you're thinking in the moment, and as a respondent of a poll, you're going, well, what's in it for me? How does that impact me? Max's process in United Way has us, well, how does that impact me? Oh, how does it impact my community? And come up with some good solutions. So to your board and your leadership, I'm please God that this becomes more and more a standard and not just the political diatribe that comes off of Bling, which doesn't